We walked in a line through the woods, our tails brushing against the undergrowth and steering small clouds of golden dust from the path. My feet dragged, each step heavier than the last. The air still smelled of pine and damp earth, but underneath it, another scent was creeping in. Thin, sharp, and wrong. It wasn't the honest smoke of a campfire of burnt wood. It was sour, metallic, the kind that stung the back of my throat. City smoke. Hikari led the way with her usual quiet certainty. Her gait steady, shoulders squared. She had nothing to fear. The city was almost her second home now. But for Itsuka and me, it was foreign ground. This would only be my second time crossing the gate. My first had been 3 years ago, when Hikari fought in the UA Sports Festival. Even then, I'd felt the city's heartbeat through the noise and the heat. It had been too much. Now, as the last curtain of trees began to thin, I could already hear the world on the other side, faint at first, like a restless sea behind a wall. The trees thinned until the canopy broke apart completely, spilling off into a clearing I barely recognized. Where there used to be a path of moss and wildflowers, there now stood the gate, tall, gleaming, and utterly out of place. It wasn't like the graceful arches of our village or the shrines carved into the roots of the mountains. This thing was cold and straight, made of metal and reinforced glass, humming faintly with energy. Sigils and hero emblems were etched across its frame, shining like warning marks. I'd been little the last time I saw it, but I remembered the sound it made when they built it, still groaning where no metal belonged. Now that sound lived inside it, vibrating through the hinges as the wind pressed against them. Beyond it, the world shimmered in heat and motion. I could almost see the flicker of vehicles, feel the pulse of something enormous and alive. Hikari turned back to us, her tails lifting with a quiet authority. We'll go straight to the school, take a look around, and head home after sunset. Her voice was calm, but something about the way she watched the gate made me wonder if she felt it too. That shift in the air, like balance tipping. You'll see the city a bit on the way there. Get used to the noise, the pace, the people. She paused then, eyes flicking toward the horizon where smoke blurred into light. It's different out here, she added softly, almost to herself. But if you plan to live among them one day, you need to know what that feels like. She didn't have to say the rest. I knew what she meant. About the way people would look at us, about the stories they whispered since father fell. I swallowed hard and nodded. Itsuka didn't answer, just crossed her arms and stared at the barrier as if daring it to open first. The city wasn't waiting for us. It was holding its breath. Hikari pressed her hand to the panel beside the gate. It opened with a low hum, the sound rippling through the air like a heartbeat waking up. The metal shifted apart, and for a breath, I thought the world itself had split open. The forest behind us exhaled pine and quiet. The city before us inhaled smoke and chaos. The moment we stepped through, it hit all at once. The roar of engines, overlapping voices, 1,000 smells fighting for space in the air. Heat rose from the ground, shimmering against the soles of my feet. I froze, every nerve in my body lighting up at once. Itsuka didn't flinch. Not exactly. She squared her shoulders, chin lifted, like she wasn't afraid. But her tail was rigid, and I could feel her pulse quickening when I grabbed her arm. She sighed through her nose, but didn't pull away. "Relax," she muttered. "You're shaking." "I know," I whispered back, but I couldn't help it. The city was alive in a way the woods never were. Every building seemed to hum. Every step of the pavement echoed back at me like a heartbeat that was not mine. People turned to look. Some slowed their pace, whispering to each other as their eyes caught the flick of our tails or the glow in Hikari's hair. A little boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, pointing, but she pulled him closer and hurried off. I lowered my gaze, ears flattening under my hood. "Hold your head high," Hikari said quietly, turning around. Her voice steadied me. I forced my shoulders back, so my hands still trembled. Around us, the noise kept rising, and I felt the first threads of panic unravel inside me. Not just because it was loud, but because this was the world I said I wanted to be part of. But what if it never wanted me back? We hadn't gone far when Hikari slowed, her gaze sweeping over the crowd ahead. "Take your hoods off," she said suddenly, her voice even but firm. I blinked. "What?" She turned to face us, sunlight catching on the tips of her tails, bright and unashamed. "If you're going to walk through the city, walk as who you are. Don't hide." It took a frown. "Mom said we shouldn't. She said it just draws attention." "Well, Mom isn't here." Hikari caught in, her tone still calm, but etched with something that made us both stand straighter. "I am, and I've lived here long enough to know that hiding only makes them think we have something to be ashamed of." She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only we could hear her. "They'll stare anyway. They'll whisper, but if you want them to see we're not a threat, you meet their eyes and you let them see it for themselves." For a moment, none of us moved. The air felt too heavy. Itsuka was the first to sigh. She tucked her hood down, ears flicking free in the sunlight. The movement drew a few startled glances from nearby pedestrians, but she didn't flinch this time. I hesitated longer. My hands were trembling again. The last time I shone my ears outside the woods, someone had crossed the street to avoid me. But Hikari was watching, and her look wasn't stern. It was steady, the kind of look that said, "I know you can." Slowly, I pushed my hood back. The breeze caught my hair, and the warmth of the sun touched my ears. I half expected someone to shout, or for silence to fall around us. But the city just kept moving. A few hits stand, yeah, but a few didn't. The world didn't end. "See?" Hikari said softly, the faintest smile tugging at her mouth. "The first step's always the hardest." We started walking again, and this time, even with the noise on the stairs, it didn't feel like I was shrinking. The pavement still hummed beneath my feet, but now it felt more like challenge than a warning. At first, every sound still felt too sharp, like the world was made of glass ready to crack under my step. But after a while, the noise turned into rhythm. Waves of chatter, the soft thud of shoes, the hiss of street vendors' grills. The air smelled of oil and sugar, and 1,000 things I couldn't name. It shouldn't have been pleasant, yet somehow it was. Itsuka was the first to loosen up. She brushed past me, her tail swaying with a confidence that hadn't been there a moment ago. "It's not that bad," she said, squinting up at a giant screen flashing some hero commercial. "Kinda exciting, actually." I watched her grin, saw the way she tilted her head at the sound of sirens in the distance, like she was already picturing herself chasing them. For a second, I'd envied how quickly she adapted. She had always been like that. Bold where I hesitated, fierce where I failed. Still, her energy was contagious. I lifted my eyes from the ground and tried to look instead of hide. Shop windows lined the streets, glass reflecting streaks of red and gold from the signs above. The reflections twisted with every movement, like the city itself was alive, breathing around us. Hikari stayed just ahead, glancing back every now and then to make sure we were still close. A few people stared as we passed, some curious, some wary, but most just moved aside and carried on. The ones who looked the longest were always the ones who didn't understand. "They don't bite," Itsuki said under her breath, smirking at a man who quickly looked away. "Don't start," Hikari warned lightly, though I could hear the small smile in her voice. We crossed another street, and I began to notice smaller things. The way steam curled up from the food stalls, the shimmer of sunlight in a puddle, the rhythm of shoes striking pavement. The city wasn't gentle, but it was alive. And for the first time, I didn't just feel swallowed by it. I felt curious. Maybe if I could learn to move with it, I wouldn't be so afraid of what lay ahead.